me get my mic back on. All right. All right. It is Wednesday night and 7 o'clock, 7:01. As always, it is time for the South Carolina Normal Cannabis Conversation. Let's give it a minute or so here, see if we can get a couple of folks to join us on the podcast. Usually, that pretty quick couple of folks will join us. Um, oh, yeah, we will give it just a moment here. And as we kind of wait, let me click another button over here. Oh, that's not the one I'm looking for. That's the one I'm looking for. We will just kind of kick off with our welcome segment. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on the South Carolina Normal Cannabis Conversation podcast. As always, all of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness, and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. Also, at this time, I usually like to remind you to follow us on social media. There is our Instagram and Twitter scrolling across the bottom there. Don't forget, we do tend to post more to Facebook, so search us out there, South Carolina Normal. Also, search us out on YouTube. Check us out on YouTube. There are two accounts out there, so look for the one that has a couple of more subscribers than the other. Because that is the one that we live stream to. And that way, when you're on YouTube, you can subscribe, click the bell, have notifications come to remind you that, hey, it's going to start in a half hour, log on. And that way you can join us on the conversation. All right. Next on the list, don't forget to visit our website, scnormal.org. Go to the About section, drop down menu, and you will find a link over to our sponsors page. Please support our sponsors as they help support our efforts in trying to reform marijuana laws here in South Carolina and beyond. All right. Looking a little quiet tonight, but that's why we do the stream out to our YouTube, because I've actually had quite a few people say, I can't always get there on a Wednesday night, but I do go out and I make sure I watch it on YouTube. So I do appreciate y'all that do take the time to go out and listen to our podcast and try and keep up to date on what's going on here in South Carolina. Let's see. Intro and agenda. Again, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Scott Weldon. I'm the Executive Director of the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And tonight we have a special guest on with us, inspired by one of our regular attendees that happens to spend more time on Twitter than I do. And they were interacting with a candidate for the first South Carolina first congressional district, which is the district that I'm in. That's why we tend to talk about it quite a bit. That and the fact that Nancy Mace is the current representative in that seat. And because Nancy has sponsored a cannabis descheduling bill, we tend to talk about that district pretty much over all of the other 7 or 6 districts here in the state. So we're excited about that, to have a candidate for that seat coming up. I do want to remind you, this is for the November 2024 elections. That's November 5th, 2024, not for this year's election. So I feel like we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. But on the flip side of it, I'm not feeling like we're getting that far ahead of ourselves, because I know that at least the Republican presidential primary, has moved up to February 24th, which is quite early in session. So we don't know dates on the primaries for other stuff at this point. At least I couldn't find anything. Let's see. Guess who's here? Joey's here. Joey, it's always a party when you join us. So thank you very much for coming on out. So let me get back on the agenda. Did I mention it's a candidate, but I didn't say who. I don't need to really keep it a secret too much longer, but I am going to keep it a secret a couple more minutes while we get into our first trivia question. We'll get through this quick so we can get to our discussion. This is kind of a must do. All right, first trivia question of the night. is a culture category 40-point question if you're keeping score. Culture category 40-point question. It is estimated that roughly how many people smoke marijuana around the world? 210 million, 240 million, 420 million. As I remind you, the cards I play with, I don't know how old the data that they took their information from, but that is the question. Estimated that roughly how many people smoke marijuana around the world? 210 million, 240 million, or 420 million. If you know, or if you have a guess, don't forget to throw it up there in the comment section, and we'll kind of come over and check them in just a couple of minutes. At this time, I always like to kind of plug the fact that trivia questions are a sponsorable thing. If you want to sponsor a trivia question and get your business mentioned on the podcast, reach out to me through our contact page on our website, scnormal.org. All right, let me click right on over to the answer. We'll get to it, and then we will get started. 40-point question, culture category. Who's leaving guesses? Somebody should. Let's get in there. It is estimated that roughly how many people smoke marijuana around the world? Is it 210 million, 240 million, or 420 million? And the answer is 240 million. All right, let me put that away so I don't try and ask it again later. And let's kind of kick it off. All right, the secret is going to be out here in just a moment. Our guest tonight on the program is candidate again running for South Carolina Congressional District 1, Mac Deford. Let me bring Mac on into the room with us. There we go. And while we bring him in, I'm also going to share, let's see if I can find it here, his website, and I'll share a link to the website in our chat in case you want to go out and take a look yourself. There we go. And I want to just sort of start by saying, Mac, welcome to the program. May I call you Mac?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. I should have worn a different shirt.
You're quite welcome.
One on I was wearing. I said I should have worn a different shirt, though. I'm wearing the same one that I was wearing in that photo.
Well, once you get a good-looking shirt,
Yeah.
You got to stick with it. I wear the same shirt every week here. Has our logo on it, so I kind of have to, or feel obligated to. But you've got other outfits down below. We're going to look at some more of the website and recommend other folks do. Because I'm going to let our guests know. I quite often will send out some questions in advance, so I'm not just throwing everything cold at them. I might have a cold question somewhere along the way. Looking at some of this, I think I may have asked it already, so I'm not sure. But let's just kind of kick off and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then after that, we'll get into why you're running.
Sure, absolutely. So I've lived here in the Low Country a little over 13 years. I was 21. I was stationed here in the U.S. Coast Guard, so I was a law enforcement officer in the Coast Guard. So I think not a lot of people know what all the Coast Guard does, but obviously a lot of people know that they are heavily involved in drug interdiction and search and rescue. So I'm very well versed in both of those areas. And then afterwards, I went to the Citadel and the Charleston School of Law and the GI Bill. I did some death penalty defense, actually, clerked my first summer of law school, and then I went over and got some experience on the prosecution side. Then worked as an in-house attorney for a company called Blackbaud. It was my first job out of law school before returning back to public service, where I served as the number 2 attorney at the town of Mount Pleasant, and most recently as the general counsel for the town of Hilton Head Island.
Now, I do want to point out to folks on here that Mac and his fiance have 2 yellow labs, Duke and Bo. I don't care what you say, no matter who they are. If they got a couple of yellow labs, they got to be good folk.
Yes, you can bow. They're downstairs right now, so they don't come up here and bark or knock me over.
Try and join in on the podcast. Yep. We usually get that from young ones. The little ones will come in. All right. I am going to scroll down. Oh, I have this banner on. To turn off. There we go. I do want to scroll down to the why am I running, because although I don't see anything cannabis related in here, it was one of your Twitter followers or somebody that's also one of our supporters that said, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy. He'd be good to have on the podcast, and you'd like to see, I guess he's had some conversations with you through Twitter." And so when I came over and I kind of looked at your why am I running, I make, just because it's what I do, I try and make connections to, can decriminalization, even at a municipal level, benefit these type of issues. So tell us a little bit about why you're running, and then I'll sort of kind of start throwing some questions out. Just a brief synopsis, and then I'll start throwing some cannabis related questions out at you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott. I would say, I'm a Democrat, but I'm 34 years old, so I think that a lot of younger people, they're more focused on results rather than party politics. So I'm a Democrat because I believe that it's been the Democratic Party in modern U.S. history that's really kind of carried us through and championed a lot of righteous legislation, the Civil Rights Act, the GI Bill, which I benefited from and going to college and law school, got us through both world wars and is navigating us through a very difficult time right now. But I do think that there has become a very unhealthy level of unserious politicians in Washington. My whole life I've been a professional from 18 when I enlisted in the Coast Guard to working in the corporate sector to working in local government. And so I'm very focused on, meeting the challenges of our times. We have a lot of them. But I'm getting married actually next week, and Caroline and I would like to start a family. And so I would like to make sure that our children, hopefully, when we have them, when they reach the age of adulthood, that they're not stuck with the same challenges that we're facing today. So that's why I'm running.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I am at this time just going to sort of remind anybody tuned in, if you do have questions, put them in the comment section and I will pass them along. But I'm going to kind of start off with some of the questions that I obviously want to ask. As you're maybe quite aware, Nancy Mace sponsored the cannabis descheduling bill, the States Reform Act, and has informed me that she actually plans on refiling that, in this session. She said it in a light version, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, except for to maybe remove some of the social equity language in it, that type of thing. And so basically, many advocates on both sides are looking for that type of legislation, and being the only, I don't want to say the only, one of the only Republican legislators to file descheduling legislation. She's gotten a lot of attention from us and from a lot of cannabis supporters for that reason. If a Democratic candidate is elected as a representative, there's already legislation out there floating in the House that either, actually, there's not a lot that's been refiled yet. We've got the Safe and Safer Banking Act, but I believe the MORE Act should be getting, again, resubmitted, along with the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. I believe that one's kind of in the process of being rewritten as well. With that kind of thought, do you support descheduling or rescheduling cannabis at the federal level, and why or why not?
Yes, I support descheduling it. It's, in my view, it's outdated and it's out of touch with both the popular consensus and also the scientific consensus of the uses of cannabis, both recreationally but also especially medically. I think that descheduling cannabis would allow for more research, medical access for sure, and then also a framework so that we can start to build out a framework for legal recreational use of cannabis.
So as a member of Congress, there goes my mouth again, member of Congress, you'd actively support ending decriminalization through maybe co-sponsoring bills that are out there existing, that type of thing.
100%. Yes.
Excellent. Now, looking at your reasons for running, I see a number of topics that I think could be positively affected by decriminalization of simple possession. Um, some of those are, access to education and housing, control over our own bodies, feeling safe in our communities. A lot of cannabis consumers are a little paranoid. Doesn't mean that they're not out to get you. And even the fostering bipartisanship. And the one thing, I mean, I see quite often in this too is just some of the harms that it does. I get calls from time to time from young mothers or mothers to be saying that CPS had tested them and they were found positive for cannabis. And all they had done is gone to the local hemp CBD shop and picked up something that they bought over the counter, not aware that it was going to show up on the tests. And the tests are not indicating impairment in any way. But now these young mothers or mothers to be are being charged with either child neglect or child endangerment, and they're calling me saying, "What do I do?" Unfortunately, our organization doesn't have resources, so I kind of try and direct them to the ACLU of South Carolina to look at it from that aspect. But when I talk about that, a lot of the folks I talk about go, geez, I never even thought about that. I never thought about that aspect. And I don't know why these women are under, the surveillance of Child Protective Services. But to me, it's a concern because it should be their choice on how they treat their depression or how they treat their anxiety or things of that nature. Um, so anyway, on a local level, do you believe that a municipal decriminalization ordinance would be a step toward harm reduction in our communities?
I do, but I think that you want to have to be a little bit more uniformed across the state or across the nation, really. And I will say that, I mean, when you look at some of these issues that you have up on my website, right? When you talk about housing or healthcare, or economic opportunity or education, we can't think about these issues in silos, right? Because we can't think about healthcare without thinking about housing or public education. Only 20% of your health outcomes has to do with you actually going to the doctor and getting a treatment by a physician or a healthcare provider, right? 60 to 70% of your healthcare outcomes are based on social determinants like your behavior or your built environment, like where you actually live. Do you have access to a grocery store that has healthy food that's affordable? Do you live in a stable environment? So I see these issues being very interconnected. And to your point about, the criminalization of, simple possession or even, the ramifications of just having, a positive test, for example, that can really hang over someone's head for a long time, especially if they're a young person and they make a mistake or, they get busted for simple possession. And I just don't think that that's right. I mean, and I know you want to get to sort of the sentencing aspects of that later on, but I think that's wrong for us to bind somebody with that negative record because they failed a test or got popped for simple possession. It's not helpful to them, and it's really not helpful to our society, and it's not helpful in addressing any of these issues that you see here on the website that I would like to help tackle.
Thank you. Yeah, agreed. I mean, we talk about it on the podcast quite often how most of the people that are arrested are probably between 18 and 25. People that are just trying to get started, trying to just kind of find their footing as in their adulthood. And then to saddle them with residual consequences for a simple cannabis arrest that kind of just, okay, what happened to, I can't get, my education loans and things like that, because it can affect that. Oh, you have a drug conviction. Sorry, you don't qualify. Or public housing, and so they makes it even harder for somebody. And that's one thing that I've always been a little bit miffed about, I guess would be the best phrase for it, is how people like to stereotype cannabis consumers as lazy, go get a job, but of course then they throw roadblocks up in front of you to go and get a job.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. uh, so um,
I
really with that, what's your stance on expungement for marijuana related, for prior marijuana related convictions, nonviolent convictions without, extenuating circumstances type thing? Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is going to be unsurprising. I mean, especially if you're going to be decriminalizing marijuana, then those who have been penalized in the past should have a fresh start. It's no longer illegal, if that becomes the case. So, yeah, I think that they would or should be entitled to the expungement process, and that there should be resources available to allow states to begin to enact that expungement process, because it would be a very tough process. I mean, we have to take that into account too administratively, um, to actually carry that out. But I do think that there would need to be some federal resources for states to streamline that process so that it is efficient. But there are a lot of folks out there with nonviolent, simple, just personal possession drug charges, and yeah, I would fully support an expungement process for them, um, especially if cannabis is decriminalized.
all right, I can kind of switch that screen off here for a moment. I have a couple of, I also sent you a couple of questions on just criminal justice reform in general. Let me take a quick peek at those and see if I have one or two that I want to kind of also um, ask about. Well, I guess I kind of like this one, especially with a little bit of your background. I think it was the fourth, the one I sent you. What is your stance on police reform, and what policies would you support increase to increase accountability and transparency in law enforcement agencies?
Yeah, I mean, so my first duty assignment in the Coast Guard was at a Coast Guard Police Department in Baltimore, Maryland. I was at the Coast Guard Yard. If any of the listeners are familiar with the Baltimore area, in a very unsafe part of Baltimore, and so we would routinely interact with the local police. There was always bleed over in terms of crime, if it was coming towards the base or happening right outside of the base, and we would get involved. And so I was able to interact with many different law enforcement agencies, local police officers, and I saw a difference between some departments, and I won't name names for the purposes of this, but I saw things that I didn't agree with, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the mentality in policing, of kind of protecting your own at all costs, even if it means that you're giving up your integrity, which is wrong in my view. But yeah, I think there needs to be greater accountability and transparency, especially in the disciplinary process. In South Carolina, for example, body cam footage is excluded from public records requests, right? So the police department does not have to provide body cam footage. It can exempt it from a FOIA request, and but it doesn't apply that same exemption for dash cam video. So I just think that that's very odd. That's not really in the spirit of transparency, especially because body cameras were to promote transparency. So obviously that's not something that U.S. Congress would have purview over per se, but I think that in terms of providing funding to states, that they would have to abide by certain um, certain transparency requirements. But I also think it has to do with whether or not you're enhancing the training or quality of police officer applicants to deal with mental health crises. And that's something that and I think Representative May supporting cannabis reform is good. But again, looking at these things not in silos, she voted against the Law Enforcement De-escalation Training Act. That would have provided law enforcement with de-escalation tactics for dealing with mental and behavioral health crises, right? And so she also voted against the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was signed into law by the president in June of this year. But that also, helps with mental health issues, and so I think that goes hand in hand with law enforcement, because a lot of the time, some of the deadly interactions that occur between the public and law enforcement, there's a mental health element to that. That is, unfortunately, law enforcement's not equipped to handle those all the time.
Right. They don't really have the kick glove option most times when it's,
Yeah.
in those situations for them, it's safest to use of force.
Yeah. And instead of calling, if you have, trained professionals, social workers that can respond either with police if it's, an unsafe situation, but, embedding them in the response process, because again, especially here in the Low Country and in South Carolina in general, we really suffer with a lack of access to mental health resources in this state. And South Carolina is not the only unique state in that shortcoming. So, I think that's a huge issue within police reform that really deserves a lot of attention and a lot of action. And I think that, lawmakers need to move on that with a sense of urgency.
Very good. Very good. I like that. None of the others are kind of hitting home for me at the moment, if you will. I did want to ask, because of your law enforcement background, that one question. I thought that was a great response. Let me just double check. I see somebody's commented up here. That's about the MORE Act. But we do have a welcome Mac and a hi Mac. These are kind of commented a little earlier before we started chatting. We're kind of getting to that point where we're getting ready to do our second trivia question. And I want to thank you for coming on and talking about your campaign. I don't believe a primary date has been set yet for
it has. It's June 11th of 2024.
Oh, okay. Okay, there
Yeah.
has been. Thank you for that. Because I looked at Ballotpedia earlier tonight and I did not see that. So
I'll say that with a caveat, because we don't know. I was up in DC 2 weeks ago, and I got to sit in on the U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments that are going to determine the outcome of the first district lines. And we don't know what those lines are going to look like and when they're going to go into effect. It could be a conceivable situation where the lines get redrawn or go into effect after filing, in which case it may or may not impact the dates. So, but
okay.
as of now, it's June 11th. But a lot to look out for. In January, we expect that the Supreme Court will issue their opinion, and so we'll just kind of go from there.
All right. Yeah, we will definitely keep an eye out. Again, I am South Carolina Congressional District 1, so I'll be watching closely. I'll be voting in the election. So good luck to you. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Any parting words you'd like to leave us with?
What's that?
Any parting words you'd like to leave us with?
Sure. I'll just say this. I really do believe, and I'm not an alarmist, but I do believe that we're kind of at a crossroads as a country. There's a lot of divisiveness, and there's seemingly not a lot of effort up in Washington and a lot of levels of politics that are trying to bridge that divide. So, I just encourage people to be engaged, vet your candidates, really, push them and, ask them the uncomfortable questions. I like uncomfortable questions, because even if I don't know the answer, it makes me think, and that's human. So, but approach all of this with a sense of urgency, because really, the time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining, and it's not really shining right now. So, we have a lot of work to do if we're going to be successful moving forward. So, yeah, those are my parting words.
All right. Well, I do want to kind of remind you, if I haven't mentioned it before, we are doing a rally, a cannabis support rally on the State House steps in South Carolina on January 17th. That's a Wednesday. We'll be doing a press conference before that. We'll be inviting some legislators to speak on pro-cannabis legislation that they filed here in the state. So you're welcome to come on out and join us for the rally, and hopefully we have a nice weather day out towards there on the front steps.
Okay. I've got it written down here right now, so I'll throw it in my calendar here in just a minute.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Have a great evening.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Take care.
So long now. All right. That was definitely an interesting discussion. I like his perspective, especially as someone who's been in law enforcement on multiple sides of the table, I guess you would call it. Let me close up my questionnaire here. And let's see. Oh, talking about law, that is the category for our next trivia question. Category is law, 40-point question. In the Philippines, the penalty for possessing 700 grams of marijuana is what punishment? 20 years, life imprisonment, or death? Category law, 40-point question. In the Philippines, the penalty for possessing 700 grams of marijuana is what punishment? 20 years in prison, life imprisonment, or death? I have to do the math. Roughly 25 ounces, less than 2 pounds. All right, who's got a guess that here? Who's got a guess? Let me see. I guess law category, 40-point question. In the Philippines, the penalty for possessing 700 grams of marijuana is what? Here comes the answer. 20 years, life imprisonment, or death? Life imprisonment. Life imprisonment. Don't want to go to the Philippines with that kind of quantity. All right. That is our second cannabis question for the evening. Let me kind of put that in there. Don't need to do any more math. All right. I have been a little sluggish. I can't deny I've been a little sluggish lately. If any of you have joined me the past couple of weeks, I was out of it. Feeling much better now. Feeling much better. I'm glad I was because I didn't want to have to, like, be sick and interview a guest. So anyway, um, things are kind of coming together. I know I mentioned it last week, our updated date for our rally, and press conference prior to that in the inside lobby. We've got a couple folks kind of already plugging in to volunteer and set us up with entertainment, and that stuff is all slowly coming together. But the flyer that we've been putting out there has kind of a general timeline to it to let you know approximately how we plan the morning and afternoon to come out. We will be starting the press conference indoors at about 9:30, a little bit before maybe. We're hoping to have some press coverage there. We will be inviting pretty specifically just legislators to speak in the press conference itself, talk about the legislation that they have submitted here in the state and what they hope it will do. As you know, most of the pro-cannabis legislation here in the state has been submitted by Democrats, and will probably never see the light of day, get out of committee. It'd be acknowledged in committee, but can always hope. I do plan on inviting Senator Davis, but I don't expect him to participate um, because we're talking about decrim. We're not talking about medical use. We are talking about the need to decriminalize cannabis here in South Carolina for the simple possession of cannabis here in South Carolina for all adults. I don't want to say for children, that kind of thing, but of course, you know us, we'd like to do a no fine, no time, no court cost type of decrim. Um, decrim does not legalize. All it does is it changes the penalty. It depenalizes it for the most part. And that's why we can do that at municipal level, but we can't do it on a ballot at state level. It's just not in the state constitution. But that is our focus. I mean, yes, we need medical here in the state. Yes, all the other advocates say you have to get medical first. Yeah, I know they say that. Um, and there's folks out there fighting for that every day. We will support by writing our legislators and um, lobbying in that manner. But our rally's focus is the need for decrim. Decriminalize the simple possession because of the harm that it does to our young people and our other residents here in the state. The harm it's doing to people who have gotten caught with hemp, CBD, but they test positive for cannabis. And so, DJ Gamecock, rumor has it that DJ Gamecock's going to be there on the 17th of January, spinning some cannabis tunes. DJ Gamecock, I I ask you, will you invite Snoop Dogg for us? I'll put it in your hand. I think if he's going to say yes to anybody, he'd say yes to you. To come out, help spin some tunes for a little bit on the State House steps. Uh, Absolutely. I think that would be a blast. I don't know how much Henry McMaster would think it's a blast seeing Snoop on the State House steps. Uh, but but yeah, that would definitely be a picture most people would not expect to see. Take them around the other side and on the south side and get pictures of them with Strom Thurmond, um, the statue over there on the other side. Anyhow, that would be fun. So that's, I know I'm starting to ramble on it, but that's kind of our focus. Um, I am really a little bit less in control of the rally portion of it right now. We're asking our good friend DJ Josh to sort of be our MC and kind of help organize and or keep us on track of the different things that I've sort of listed on that paper there, on that flyer. Bringing in some entertainment with DJ Gamecock and some good cannabis songs. We can do a little bit of that's how an old fat guy like me dances. If you were wondering what I was doing, no, it was not a seizure. Um, Although it's hard to tell sometimes. Um, Now, anyway, I have kind of like I said, I was out of commission about the past 2 weeks. I do have a couple things. My timeline right now is to actually start building my list of who the invites are for this for the press conference portion itself. What legislators I'll be inviting, formulating my invite for them to sort of express that we want them to talk about, their legislation. I'm not always real quick and fast with that stuff. I'm a little slow. I have been using AI to help me with things. If it wasn't noticed tonight, I've been using it to kind of come up with my interview questions if I'm interviewing somebody. And it's helpful. It really is kind of helpful. Although you have to kind of go back and look at it. It's not always perfect. It's not always right. But for somebody like me who probably failed creative writing, if I ever took a creative writing class, um, definitely helped me formulate information on paper. So that's kind of my next step here over the next week or so. I realized that just last week, last Wednesday, was our 3 month away. So we're now like 1 week off of that. Um, Less than 3 months out till we get this thing going. I have a digital flyer that I've shared with some. I've shared to our social media. I have a printable version of it if somebody wants me to email it and they want to print it out on their own in their own communities and try and share it around a little bit. Um, that kind of thing. I was um, and of course, our good friend DJ Gamecock reminded me it's also time to start kind of drafting up our press release, to kind of give a good one. It's a little early to be sending it, but they need to have it on their calendar. They work a little quicker than that. But it is something that, especially with the holidays kind of just preceding our event, um, we don't want to just start hammering right in the first of the year going, hey, this is coming up. We actually want them to maybe announce it. Oh, yeah, a couple of weeks from now, this is coming up. That might get a few more people noticing and get us out. One thing nice with that is the State House media uh, room or whatever has it online has a list of all of the media sources that cover State House events and State House stuff. So we'll be doing sort of a preliminary press release. We'll be doing our primary press release only about 2 weeks out because that's the way we find it works best. We will be following it up with a third, basically reissue of the primary press release, roughly the Friday before or the Monday before our actual event. So that is the schedule for our press releases at the moment to kind of start spreading the word. Um, I almost hit the button. Now, talking about printing up some flyers, I almost hit the button to have some of those printed up as 5x7 postcards. Um, Maybe a little smaller postcard because we have been sending out the info packs, those spread the word info packs that we've been asking you to, giving you one for free if you pay for the shipping. Quite honest with you, if you wanted a couple of them, we might, as long as we cover our shipping. Uh, we asked for a couple of bucks donation on it, and I'll tell you why. We asked for a couple of bucks donation on it because it helps us cover the printing cost, so that next time we see a big sale on them, we can get them at a pretty good deal like we did this time. Um, Buying a piecemeal along the way can get expensive, so we try and wait for their big 40% off sales a couple times a year. But anyway, I was looking, thinking I could probably get a couple of those shipped to me in about 2 weeks. And then I could start including a handful of those into each of the spread the word packs. And folks can contact us and get a free spread the word pack, just pay shipping, and they can have a handful of those. I don't know what a handful would be, probably a half a dozen into each pack, maybe a couple of more to try and my thought trying to get them out to your local vape shop or your local CBD shop or hemp shop and see if they will put this card out in a prominent spot. Um, I like the 5x7 size because it stands out a little bit more. The smaller ones will fit in a number 10 envelope. This is funny. I'm holding up an envelope, and on this side it says Nancy Mace. It's from her office. But anyway, um, I don't know your thoughts on that, but I'm sort of dragging my feet because it's poor. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on cards that I might not get distributed fully. Um, but think about that. I'm thinking about it. I'm probably going to order some, and I'm probably going to start adding them to the spread the word packs. I've already had somebody up in Greenville asking me for some printed ones, and they're a regular advocate. They're out in the streets of Greenville. I think Greenville it is, like every frickin' Tuesday. I think that it's like Taco Tuesday or something. Um, but it seems like they're out there on a regular basis supporting cannabis in the Greenville area. So when we can, we definitely make sure that they have some stuff to pass around. Um, if you're ready to go out and hit the streets, let us know. We'll try and make sure you're supplied. Uh, So let me go ahead and close up this other stuff I have on my other screen. Don't need these questions for the candidate any longer. Delete. And what did he say? Tentatively June 11th for the primary. Okay, that's good info. Good info. All right. I don't have any topics on the top of my head to cover the last 15 minutes here tonight, folks. Like I say, our big push right now um, is going to get our organization done and properly get this event attended in January. That's really what we need to do. I think just the announcement, once we get confirmation from Snoop Dogg, that's going to really help bring the crowd out. Um, Cheech and Chong should kind of be invited too, if you want to get on. Now I'm just dreaming. Now I'm just dreaming and making fun a little bit. No, I love the idea though, man. He, you never know. It never hurts to ask. I've tried a number of times to see if we could just, I want to say two, maybe three. Um, Try to get us to just out in the parking lot of a Willie Nelson concert here in South Carolina. Um, and by contacting either venue or, Willie's publicist, or I actually somehow or another connected, I think through a daughter or granddaughter. And, they got a response saying, we'll forward this on to his people. Um, and they never went any further than that. So, um, it's not like the old days. But yeah, if we could get a name, I mean, geez, who's known for cannabis here in the state? I know at least here in Charleston, Bill Murray is. If we could get Bill Murray to come out and be part of our rally, that would help get more attention. Uh, yep, we're going to work on an early release. Like I said, we're going to have sort of a pre-press release, sort of announcing the event officially, that we can send out to these media sources, and then we'll do our primaries as we normally would a little later in the session. Um, excuse me. Um, yeah, before I send the press release and announcement of that kind of stuff, I want to be actively working on who we're inviting for our primary speakers for the press release itself. So it's a little premature now, but it is not too premature. It's just a little. Um, that is down the line shortly. All right. Other thing I do want to kind of talk about briefly, and I'm excited about this. We had on candidate for District 6 City Council in North Charleston 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I would say 3 weeks ago because I was sick the last 2 weeks. Um, Big hit, pun intended. Okay. I'll share that one just because I like the pun. Bill Murray would be a big hit. I like that. Thank you. Oh, goodness. Um, Brandon Trollinger. Brandon Trollinger running for North Charleston District, City Council District 6. Um, After our conversation, after having him on the podcast, he's reached out to some other folks that are running for office in North Charleston. Um, I believe some of them were mayoral candidates. I believe some of them were other um, city council candidates. I don't know if he actually spoke to um, anyone that was actually the mayor or a sitting city council member. I believe he told me two of them were sitting council members. And I know the one candidate he told me that he contacted that's running for mayor, Reggie Burgess, Chief Reggie Burgess of the North Charleston Police Department. We're crossing our fingers for Brandon in North Charleston because Brandon wants decrypt. Let me hang on. Let me bring that up. Brandon Trollinger wants to decrim North Chalk. That's a good way to put it. He wants to decrim North Chalk. Um, After our having him on the podcast the other week, I sent him over one of our petitions that had basically the wording for, an ordinance that we would be petitioning for. He readdressed the numbers on it so it would fit into their ordinance schedule, their ordinance book, whatever categories. Um, he may have done, I believe he did some rewriting on it where it is not a no fine, no time, no court cost, but probably more I think he rewrote it as $100 civil citation. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's what it was. Still better than a misdemeanor criminal charge and all that fun. Um, Let me put that back on the screen one more time. Yes, Brandon Trollinger wants to decrim North Chuck. Um, he's contacted me back since then, kind of gave me some of that follow-up information about rewrite and adding the right numbers to it. Um, so watch that election, North Charleston, watching city council elections. I mean, seems odd because I don't know, it won't normally say this. Watch the city council district, as the city council election. Uh, but, you know, North Chalk would be a great first decrim city. I always think, what would it take to do Charleston? And that I think is roughly 15,000 plus signatures if we do it the petition way. And getting those signatures is a challenge. 15, probably more like 18 to 20,000 now. I think the population's grown a little bit. Um, you know, the easier path than collecting signatures, doing petitions, stuff like that, is have a city council member that is willing to sponsor um, sponsor that type of ordinance. So yeah, yeah. And again, he is in District 6, North Charleston City Council elections coming up November 7th. Early voting started 2 days ago on the 23rd. So you're able to go out early vote at, you'd have to Google or go to scvotes.org to find your polling locations. Um, but early voting is going on now. And then basically that should go through November, I want to say 4th, Saturday the 4th, and then voting election day on November 7th. Um, Keep your eye out on that. Also, I'll mention real quick, if you're in South Carolina Senate District 42, Dion Tedder, who was on our podcast a couple of weeks ago as well, sponsor of the what we call the smell bill. He is running in that election. So if you are in District 42, please vote for Dion Tedder and make him, he's a House rep right now. He would become a senator. We have what, 46 senators versus 128 House reps. Um, and I would assume he would reintroduce his smell bill legislation in the Senate. At least that would be my hope. Um, so yeah, election time, just a couple of weeks out. What are we talking? 2 weeks ish. Um, Getting close, yeah. So early voting is going on now, and I don't know where y'all are from necessarily. So if you have some city council elections going on in your area, and you know that the city council person is There we go. I should have my sound back on again too. Um, I almost made it through the program this week. My computer just took a crap. It's busy restarting itself. I got pretty good at keeping yeah, keeping this phone handy and ready to log on, so we don't really miss a beat here. Um, but pretty much that's all I got for you tonight. Any thoughts and or other comments that you have, please reach out to me through our contact page on our website. Um, Next week, I don't even know what week it is here. Oh, next week probably like one of our first of the month, so it won't be meeting time yet. Um, but yeah, next Wednesday we'll be right back out here. So don't forget, please come back out and visit us next Wednesday. Talk about some more cannabis related stuff here in the state and at federal level. Excuse me. And again, I want to thank Joey for suggesting that I reach out to candidate Deford. If any of you others know of, I know there's at least one other Democrat running against Nancy. I just saw his name earlier today, and I believe there's a Republican running against her as well, Austin somebody. So that should all be kind of entertaining. Um, but we will learn more about that as we move ahead. But if you have a suggestion on a candidate you'd like to see on the podcast, let me know. I'll reach out to them, see if we can get them to come on and talk about cannabis. Um, I don't know if I can share the comments from where I'm at now. Oh, there we go. Good tip, Joey. Yes, it was a good tip, Joey. It was a good conversation. So yeah, if any of y'all have any suggestions on candidates you want to see on in the future, moving into next year's cycle for the excuse me, for the most part, which is a presidential year cycle. I just finished my. I'm going to throw this as a. Hang on, let me log on. My computer's coming alive again. Okay, sorry about that. Um, yeah, I just finished my poll training to work at the polls in 2 weeks, and I don't know what I'm going to do next November. I will probably, go ahead and work the primaries next year, but I don't think I'm going to work the polls. All right, give me a real quick chance to switch over here. All right, mic working? Let me go double check. Mic's on. Headphones look like they're working. All right, sorry about that, folks. Completely lost track again of what I was talking about. But anyway, I think it was. Now I see good tip, Joey. Don't forget, give me your suggestions. That's it, folks. 7:59. We're going to have to kind of roll it on out of here for tonight. Don't forget, please follow us on our social media. Um, Again, Joey, I think that the Twitter a little bit more. I don't visit there quite as often, but I'll find the messages when they do come through from y'all. Also over at the Instagrammy one, I post there not as regularly as I do to Facebook, only because they don't let you put like live links, sharing a link. So I do the Facebook a little bit more, but really main thing is go over to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, click that bell, subscription bell and notification bell. That's what I'm thinking. The subscription button, the notification bell, and join us here every Wednesday night. Bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your concerns. And in the meantime, let's get ready to rally. See you next Wednesday. Have a great night. Bye all.